So thanks a lot again, Mike, Meiré, and Edel Rodriguez. We have been listening to your talks. And as you can see, I'm really very analog. I have lots of paper with me. So who of you both feels more related to this pile of papers?
I do everything on paper. Yeah. Is this on? Hello?
It is
Hello.
on.
Yeah, I am very much paper oriented. I don't trust devices. I've lost too many things, and I don't know. I like to keep a record, and pretty much in everything that I do, I'm really tactile. I think it's important to keep touching things, touching paper, touching like I showed up there, cigar boxes. And the one thing that I sometimes tell my students is that, for example, when you use Photoshop, you could have, I don't know, 2,000 brushes, right? But it's still 2,000 brushes. Yeah, there's no cigar box to paint inside your computer. Another thing that I did a whole series with coffee, that was paintings with coffee, and it happened just because I accidentally put my brush in my coffee, in my espresso, instead of to clean it. And when I hit that, then I'm like, oh, coffee, I could paint with this. And I did a whole series that were pretty successful just because I was working and dealing in the real world. If I was on a computer, I'd have to think ahead and think, oh, I want to duplicate what coffee looks like. So it's very important that, yes, maintain your digital things, but also live in the world, see the world, walk around and see things.
But in terms of this concept of being able to touch things, I guess Mike would answer you, there are new possibilities of touching things without touching them.
Bin ich online? Geht das auch noch hier? Hallo? Hallo? Okay, alles gut. I have to say as well, it's I still live as well in the real world. I just used to don't separate them anymore. I think we just live in a world. And the world is physical, of course, human being. We have our, desires and, our impulses. And digital is just another instrument, actually. And when you have this example, for with the coffee, actually, I'm always very happy when I'm in an area where there's less WLAN power and I have to download because it takes such a long time. And very often you generate incredible bugs. And these kind of bugs I take as well, like a coffee stain, and then I think, oh, wow, this is an interesting aesthetic. Maybe we should consider that in a way, So because it's actually having this approach of Fehlerkultur, just embrace the bug. There is something, because I think actually this is human in a way. And this is what I see with my kids. The youngest is 11. And he would never really think this is a different world.
Listening to both of your speeches, we have been talking a lot about things going viral, which is, of course, something that is possible because we have digital means, or possible easier than it has been in the past, where there were only analog means. But what's the human factor in this going viral thing for you?
I think it's communication. It's the idea that you still want to tell a story to someone. You want to communicate an idea to someone, and too many times, people want to use the technology, but they have nothing to say with it. And I think the first thing is figure out what you want to say, and then how you're going to say it. And I think that's, for me, it's always the human thing. Is it goes back to figuring out that design is really a way to tell a story, to say what's on your mind, and you're just using a different tool. And a tool that can kind of, like a megaphone, it can make a small idea bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think, to me, that's how I use it. Yeah.
Is this the thing you refer to when you say, it was in your film, you were kind of searching the provocation because you want people to talk about it?
Yeah, I think the dangerous thing with what's happening in the United States, and I mean, to some degree, we're dealing it with over there, but I feel that it's underground everywhere. This, people feel unsettled. They want to blame someone, et cetera, et cetera. So we in the U.S. just do everything in public. We don't cover it up. We're like, F you, you know, it's crazy. But at least we're dealing with it, you know. And I think that's what's important is for people to be talking about it and get involved. Part of the reason, part of what happened in the United States is that too many people took for granted that a black president is a normal thing in America. Young people that grew up with Obama, they're like, wow, this is wonderful. We have an African-American president, we have gay marriage, and they were just disconnected, you know. I went, in 2016, I went to my class and I said, let's do an assignment on political posters, you know, a week before the election. And they were all complaining, I don't like politics, I don't want to do this. Like, do we have to? I'm like, yes, yes, have an opinion, damn it. Put it on paper. And it was like, sort of like pushing them to do this thing. Then 2 weeks later, I show up to teach the class. You know, the election happened, Trump won. And then the next day or the second day, I show up to class to teach the class. And no one was there. There were 2 people. And I said, what happened? Where is everybody today? And they're at the protest. So from 2 weeks, they were not interested. And all of a sudden, when it affects them, then all of a sudden everybody gets interested in politics. And you have to maintain that interest and that connection on a regular basis, so you just don't assume that your rights are guaranteed.
I would like to say, with the thought of having an opinion or building up an opinion, what you just said, find your message before you search for the means of spreading it. What do you think about that thought? Because, I mean, in the world today, we do have the tools and the devices and the gadgets, and some people just spread without having a message.
I think that's actually really the most important point right now, that before we use either analog or digital, you know, we really have to face ourselves what is actually our attitude or our opinion about what do we actually want to say, you know. And I think very often people just start, you know, and instead of waiting a little bit, you know, because you have so many possibilities out there to be seduced in a different way, you know. I think it's very important that you become really, that you face yourself, you know, in a way, okay, this is really my story, this is really what I wanted to say, and now I'm looking for the right channel.
Of course, in the things you are doing, oftentimes you are dealing with commercial messages because you are related to brands that want to sell certain things. And how does that affect, you know, the concept of building a message or an opinion?
Yeah, I have to say as well, in the last few months, you know, I used to be always the young kid on the other side of the table, you know, so now I'm the older one and the younger generation comes in and they ask me in a way. So it's the opposite. In the long run, I can say, you know, of course we have to sell, but it's called the economy of attention. He has to sell as well something, you know, and actually in a way sell is, I'm not talking about money only. It's just, you know what, you want to get your stuff out and you want to be heard, you want to be seen in a way. And these kind of platforms we have these days are actually very helpful if we use them properly, you know. So this generation I'm talking to, of course they need to sell, but you know, in the long run they want to figure out what is actually the challenge. Let's say the example with the car industry, you know. Of course the whole distribution, everything, the salespeople, they need to sell, they have to place products, but we're all facing this situation that through technology, maybe anonymous driving and all these kind of things, sharing economy, needs a complete different business model. And so they are rather interested in having an exchange with people who maybe have an idea or a clue about what will be the next step, you know. So therefore, I think it's this kind of selling. I don't know. It's just I think it's not as it used to be. So that it's always directly political in a way. It's rather it's a need, but they don't want to sell everything just for selling. You know. So it's a generational thing, and the generation who's coming in, they are able maybe to make a difference.
Let's maybe stay with this thought of selling, because you're coming from a surrounding where you grew up with propaganda messages, which used to be very simple messages, as you told us and showed us in your film. Right. And of course, you are working with the same means. You create pictures which might only have 3 to 4 components, but still seem to carry quite a complex message. How does it work?
How does what work?
Carrying a complex message by very little tools?
Oh, I see. It's basically the way I think about it is that, I mean, it's been the case for a long time, but even more now, that you really need to communicate in 1 to 2 seconds. And that's my focus, because everyone is on, distracted all the time. We're constantly distracted by other things. So I want to grab that person right away and then make them think and have to grab that story, read that story, pick up that magazine, whatever. I think of my magazine covers as posters, as a poster that you would see from 10 feet away. I want it to communicate if that person sees it over here. I also want it to communicate.
You are so digital.
No, but I also want it to communicate at this size, I want if you're flipping through your phone, something that goes, oh my God, and you have to, and that's, I think, what's been successful is this idea to communicate in a rapid manner, but then learn more about it, and that's, that's what I've tried to do. And in terms of, propaganda or not, I feel like I'm making personal opinion. It's my opinion, and no one can take that away from you.
But now, hold on, you are in the home country of cultural pessimism. You are in Germany. So how big...
Cultural pessimism?
Yes.
Am I?
Yeah. You still have to stay, I'm sorry. We have to go through this all together now. No, of course, the question that is on the hand for me is how big is the danger of simplifying too much?
In which way?
Going right in the face of people, having the message totally clear, because simplifying is something you seem to have.
If you don't communicate quickly, basically, I kind of see it like it's like a war, with someone and a party and a system that is trying to make you think that this isn't happening. They're constantly telling you lies, making up stories in the United States. And you have to confront that on the same level, Like if someone from there is here and wants to push me, I will punch them back. I'm not about avoiding the topic or moving in another direction. It's about confronting something very directly, because if you don't confront it, it's going to take you over.
I guess, on the other hand, this is probably what Donald Trump is, would say is his maxim as well.
It's what?
His goal is confronting and having the simple message.
Sure. So then you're basically in a struggle and to communicate and inform, and then you have to pick a side, unfortunately. And too many times, the people do not want to pick a side. They want to just not create problems. But when you do that, you just get run over by the other side.
In fact, this is time for the first question. I have Regula Stempfli has written it down for us. We will listen to her later. She's asking, Edel, did your work maybe help Trump to become an even bigger brand?
Oh, really, there's nothing that I can do. That I've gotten, that question before is this helping or is this assisting him? He's got plenty of power and plenty of things to push that agenda, and if no one is there sort of confronting it, it would just they would just take over. It's really it's not just me. There's many other artists and many other protesters that are being visible. They show up to Washington, 100,000, 200,000 crowd to protest. So are you going to say those protesters are making Trump bigger by giving him attention? No, because if you go that route, they'll just keep, taking over and more and more and more. So there's a variety of reasons why I do that, my work. Aside from what's happening there, I want the rest of the world to see my work and understand that there is opposition. I want people in Turkey, in Russia, in China, and in Cuba to understand that America is a great country where someone like me can make this work, and I'm still alive.
It's not wood, I'm sorry. It's plastic.
I haven't been shut down, things like that. And to me, that's the example of America, that you have your first right is freedom of speech. So there's other things. Aside opposition, there's also showing what a great country it is, and many other reasons. Mm.
In both of your work, this concept of guerrilla art seems to be a certain component. And we have a question from the public that says, guerrilla ideas become mainstream. Does this make it lose power?
Well, actually, the dilemma we all have is that actually bad news are the better news. You know, bad news always generate more, you know, followers in a way, or maybe more attention. So, but I think it's we have to work it out in a way that we have to, you know, this is. I was just thinking as well, just going back to this one situation, because I didn't know that you had as well. That we are so much involved with Trump in a way. I thought as well for 1 second when I was listening to your speech, I was thinking as well, wow, he really makes a brand out of him in a way. I thought there was something. And yeah, but I think in the long run, this is actually why magazines maybe call you, because you get the punch out, and this is what they're looking for, you know. So, but the next thing is going back to your question.
The question from the public was guerrilla. Does it lose power because it becomes mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually when I thought about preparing the talk for today, I wasn't really sure showing these pictures from Jürgen Teller, because I don't know anymore if it's really appropriate. I just thought, wow, within 5 years, everything has changed, you know. There's a lot of things where you think you wouldn't do this the way today anymore, like we did it, you know, like say with Garage, you know, the tattoo. And but actually, I'm very happy that I had the time to do it, to experience something like this, because nowadays there's always this kind of police watching you in a way, you know. I really call it the shitstorm. We have to be a bit careful that the society doesn't become, you know, voreilender Gehorsam. You know, I don't know how to translate that. But I think very often you cannot even say anymore, I like beef, you know. So there's a lot of things going on. And I think you have to be, in a way, guerrilla, which comes back to your story. Are you authentic with what you do? And otherwise, it's completely mainstream. Otherwise, everything is completely conditioned, you know. And you need to have this kind of moment where you speak up in a way. And if this becomes, I don't know, I think you have to do it anyway. Otherwise, how do you want to evolve? And if it comes too easy or maybe too often through social media, there will be another level. Right now, we're just tipping into that.
Speaking of shitstorms, when I was listening to your talk and seeing the images you were presenting, something was coming to my mind, because we do obviously see very many young women with not very much clothing on, and something that has become very viral in the last 1.5 years was, of course, the whole Me Too discussion. How does that affect the work of yours?
I remember for Dormroth, the first brochures, we were shooting nudes. Nowadays it's impossible, you know. So, but as well because of the Emirates and so, you know, where you go. And this is it's a kind of it's a thin line. It's a moral question, you know. I think actually, I thought we have. I think. Do we really need to point out that we have as well female speaker here today? Isn't it already normal in a way? Not, I know.
That's what we like to think.
Yeah, this me too. So, you know, I had never really this kind of borders in my mind in a way, you know. So, but maybe that's a difference. I know that there's a lot of vorurteile, pre-opinion, you know, this kind of biases in the world, a lot. And I think that's why we need people like you to make people aware of this situation. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe this. But right now you're very busy with Trump, and he got the election again.
I mean, getting back to what you said about the brand, I did want to create a certain brand so that people would recognize it, and then destroy it. Basically, like then I can just do things, stretch it, do regular things to kind of not. My main focus was to stop people from becoming normalized by what they hear. You know, because when this stuff is going on, it just becomes daily life. So once in a while, this image would pop up and go, no, it's not normal. This is what just happened. A lot of people do not pay attention to what is happening in the world. They really don't. And I actually got a message last week from someone in Amsterdam who has bought all the Der Spiegel covers, and she has them on her wall. And she said, I put them up on my wall to remind me to be aware, to stay on top of what's happening in the world. One news story that happened recently was the thing that happened to the journalist Khashoggi in Turkey, right? That would have been a day story, you know, journalist killed in Turkey, right? But what the Turkish government did was they dropped something every 2 days. to keep the story going. And then that's what made the story stay in the people's eye, and the concern for the journalist grew. And it went on for a month where the Saudis would say, we didn't do that. Oh, yes? Well, we have this. And that's how I feel you need to confront injustice nowadays. It's not just come out and be outraged one day. It's this constant stream of opposition, of commentary, and I think that made a difference in that story.
Then again, of course, you can open the discussion who is using this kind of information possibilities right now.
Sure, no, there's other geopolitical things that are happening, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, journalists got killed. So,
in the end, something that seems quite interesting to me in the way you are doing your work is this open source thought you seem to have about the art you are doing.
Right.
Do you feel nowadays when you create your art, but then you give it to the world and you even deliver certain possibilities for people to develop a view of their own of your art and publish it themselves? Do you think as an artist these days you have to get a distance to this old thought of, oh, this is my art and it only belongs to me?
I think that I've had that sort of a really loose attitude about that stuff for many years, because I really like sharing and having people. I like seeing what people do with my work sometimes, where it shows up and things like that. In this case, I felt it was even much more important to sort of put my work up as Creative Commons and say, if you want to take this to protest, go take it out. My goal is not to make a profit out of this stuff. It's more about information. I wouldn't do it with some other work of mine, you know. But in this case, it's like if you're fighting, it's as if you're fighting a war and you're ready to go into battle, and your general is like, okay, you're gonna have to pay me for the bullets. So I don't want to have. I want people to use these images as weapons in this thing.
I think in your case as well, especially with your personal history, I mean, your story, I think it's so authentic in what you do, which is really the beauty of it. So I was just as well thinking, could you, you know, commit yourself as well doing this kind of style, let's say for the Me Too campaign, you know, what would come out of this, you know? But I see as well the sharing that you give it up to the public. I think it's so beautiful to share these, or to make it accessible for them in a way, right. You know, your ideas. But seeing your pictures where you're coming from as well, you know, it was always a kind of a tribe, a family, you know, to me it feels very organic in a way, you know, what you do.
Right.
Mike,
so it would be interesting to see, would be interesting to see what could be the next step after Trump.
This is, sorry, let's just, because this is really perfect for the next question. Someone is asking, can you imagine your art, suppose you would be publishing your art in a free and healed world, what would it look like?
I make, you saw all the paintings. I would love to just be in my studio making paintings about whatever's in my head. I have many things in my head that have nothing to, you know, like this project and this kind of stuff is like maybe 5% of what I do and what I think about. But I feel I'm in a position because of my history background where I see the dangers. I see dangers that other people don't see because some of the same words were said by Castro. Some of the same, the idea of inflicting violence on your opponent at rallies is things that Castro did. So these are things that I've lived, and I left my entire family to come to America to live a good life, and then it sort of like followed me. So that's where the outrage is. But yeah, I make a lot of work that is cultural, emotional, many other topics.
So, Mike, I do have one last question for you. Where do you see magazines in 5 or 10 years?
That was asked 5 or 10 years ago, and they're still around.
That's we would call this is a near future scenario and a far future scenario, you know, because 10 years the world is a different place in a way, speaking for certain areas. I think magazines right now, what I experience with all the magazines I'm working with, we are make sure we have established, or we are on the way to establish a brand. Let's say Brand 1, O32C, there's a certain community behind. We all know that we cannot live anymore from these magazines, for sure. So we have to think about alternative business concept strategies who feed on the brand. So let's say for Brand 1, an economy magazine, of course, you know, it's like they do coachings, they do special conferences, you know. So different ideas, alternative ideas, you know, to keep the brand going. And of course, you will always have somehow the magazine, but it's rather, you know, we like to look at magazines on a very romantic idea sometimes, but you know, the industry doesn't go in there with advertisement anymore. And if this is happening, they cannot survive. The readers don't read anymore. I mean, they read, sorry, they don't buy it anymore, you know? No, they get it on the blog, they get it here and there. This is very often. A magazine like O32C, for example, this is different. This is more like a fetish. People want to have it because they're very proud of it, but it's a tu biennial. It comes out 2 times a year. A monthly-based magazine has a very hard way to go, you know? So because it costs a lot of money, we talk about quality journalists, you know, journalists, designers, everything, photography. There's a lot of logistics behind that, which costs actually a lot of money to make one little magazine. And then you think, ooh, can we sell this for €5 or even €6? Ah, they won't buy us anymore. And you go out down and you buy a flat white for €4.30. You think, wow, we are able to, you know, we don't have a problem to pay €5 or €4 for coffee, right. But we cannot imagine paying something, you know, for a blog, yeah. You know, where we know a magazine, you know, sometimes it costs €300,000-400,000 to make one issue, and then we really think, oh, €6, ooh, give me another coffee, you know. So, and then you think, really, there's something. I think what we need to do as well is we have to educate the reader, and we have to see digital doesn't mean necessarily quality. It's just a channel, you know, to make certain things accessible. But we have to find a way that if we really want to be inspired by Brand 1 or 32C, we have to have as well somehow cultivate the access, even if we want to read it because it's more comfortable, you know, on my iPhone or so, that I give a few pennies. Otherwise, it doesn't work out.
You can't have all of those businesses and all those possibilities without the base. And the base is the magazine. Yeah. So that's the issue, is that everyone wants to do video, television shows based on the magazine.
Yes, they do sub-brands, you know. So
yeah, but you can't have that without the brand.
No, you need the brand. That's so important because you have to learn to capitalize Brand 1 beside the magazine. So imagine what could be the brand without the magazine. And then you see there's a very great community. They're very loyal. So get them into, because it's all about the customer. What would these people miss out if we drop down, right. You know?
Gentlemen. So many thoughts, so little time. I'm so sorry. We have to follow a timetable. So for now, thank you very much, Edel Rodriguez and Meiré.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.